Good morning, everybody. I feel warmly welcomed by my previous director, George Metakidis. It's kind of a family. I mean, it's very nice that we meet so many friends in different environments. So today I'm particularly glad because indeed it's true, George Metakidis was one of my directors at a certain moment in time. Jacques Bous was a close collaborator. So the digital enlightenment is very close to my heart, not just by the objectives, but also by the people that has been, creating it. But it's also funny to see Carla Chiminera organizing this event locally. Again, an old friend. And I appreciate it very much, George, your speech, because then I don't need to say anything. I just said, I subscribe what George said, and that's it. So I can basically say that you said it all. But it's also very interesting that you made the relation between cloud, IoT, 5G, and I think that's a tribute to the fact that our programs are so open and that 5G and cloud and Internet of Things, seen from the perspective of a research program, are global endeavors. I think that is a kind of interesting to see that this event, for example, is supported by Huawei, that has been particularly active in our 5G PPP. So here we have a kind of an interesting gathering in itself, bringing one topic, that being IoT, as a lot of other topics adjacent to that one. And I'm sure that from the spirit of the Digital Enlightenment Forum, obviously, one particularly concern is where are we in the middle of this Internet of Things? We as people, with our own rights, with our own, perception of what is, being Homo sapiens in a fully connected or hyper-connected society. So I'm sure that the day will be very interesting for all of you, and wish I would be able to stay with you to learn more about that, because it's this in this kind of gatherings that we can evolve our own thinking and understanding. So obviously it will be certainly not relevant to quote in the start of my presentation the predictions for the billions of objects that will be connected by 2020, but it's probably more interesting to think that precisely right now when we are living this moment, there is already a lot of IoT, a lot of objects interconnected, and we have to be able to position ourselves vis-à-vis this very fast development. And I think that, George, you also draw the attention to a number of implications when we are facing this, is that, in fact, it's not just the problem of having more or less objects connected. It's in fact that this new technology, this new approach, brings a completely different setup when we think about, for example, new business models. IoT will revolutionize, like the mobile, technology has done a few years ago, business models. So we are not anymore talking about a technology. We are talking about what started being a technology, but impacts dramatically in the business processes, or on the way we understand innovation, on the ability to create, for example, new innovation ecosystems where startups, where youngsters that come out of our universities can actually very quickly ride in the market and get the market from zero to a global market from one day to the other, simply because they explore this potential of data and connectivity. And the notion of services. You are not anymore, even if you are a big firm, selling a machine. You sell a service, you control it. You make sure that it gives actually an effective service to the industry that you are serving. So, IoT is not a technology, it's actually a radical different understanding of what the market is going to be, and therefore requires a very strategic thinking in terms of an industrial strategy, as well, to come back to one of the things dear to the heart of the digital enlightenment, where does the human stay in this? And I hope that, above all, IoT will be a lot of fun for people, because this is what we need as well. So today I would like to share with you a number of simple ideas and probably some information that can be relevant to you. I think that it's the first time, actually, in the work program 16-17 that we really tackle IoT by its name and by its own nature of cross-cutting. Is this particularly important? Maybe not, but it's very significant that when we see everybody talking about IoT, when we see our commissioners, our politicians also venturing this, it's very important that in a program that is a fundamental pillar of research in Europe, by its notion and by the ability to replicate and get waves of say, reaction on the member states' national programs, it's very important that we tackle it from the right perspective. And I think that we got it very importantly in this work program as a cross-cutting issue. This means we are not talking anymore of cyber-physical alone. We are not anymore talking about data alone. We are not talking anymore about communications alone. We are not talking anymore about that or the other area of a societal challenge that may be impacted by the technology. We are saying we need to have an holistic perspective that brings all of that together. We'll see in a second how we intend to promote this bringing together of this notion, but I think that this is particularly important. A lot of our initiatives have to do with IoT. Let me draw the relation, for example, between 5G and IoT. You alluded to that one, but I think that is particularly important. Can we develop an IoT strategy based on current technology? The answer is yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the things happening today. Will the leaders of IoT be the ones that believe that current technology is the one that will deliver the all expected impacts of IoT? No. The ones that will lead in the future are the ones that understand that today the vertical-oriented sectors in our industry will gain a lot by creating a level playing field of horizontal perspective. Because obviously we believe that having a leadership in one vertical sector, this business model will remain for the future. This will, or at least may not be true. Because the data that appears to be relevant today only for environmental purposes is tomorrow particularly important for traffic or logistics. What we believe that is only important from the point of view of a connected car, and that we probably as a manufacturer will try to get all for the maximum time that we can, we will understand that will not be effective unless the driver of the car will see the car as a piece of a puzzle in his own life. And that when we will arrive at home, he will have a seamless transition between this car environment to his home environment and to his business environment. So the permeability between these traditionally oriented vertical sectors will progressively disappear. That's why it's so important that we have, for example, open platforms, because those are the point where this fusion of data will emerge for whatever the actors will want it to be. This means we need to give an opportunity to have open platforms, open standards, to allow innovative startups to pick up the data from this, combine it with the other one, combine it with sensor information, combine it with actuators, and provide the services that are relevant for the human beings. And current technology solves a number of things, but sometimes in a very cumbersome way. Let's take the mobile perspective. Internet, and Europe is leading in the internet mobile aspects. we have 3G, 4G, and yes, with LTE, you may, for example, have car-to-car connectivity. But we have to adapt it. 3G PPP is trying to work on an LTE version that will adapt to that one. Other based in other Wi-Fi, for them, standards are also trying to do the same. But we need to have a step back and see if how cumbersome is to adapt all of those things. And with 5G, what we have is this fantastic opportunity to make it simpler, more adaptable, to have immersive environments, high definition TV, etc., gaming, and at the same time, IoT perspective, where the suite of standards will be integrated, where the software that will define our networks and make our networks more flexible will allow me to create specific views of the networks for one sector or the other, thus giving a lot of flexibility, using standard big machines that can reconfigure themselves to provide this type or that other type of service. So here you see, we can deliver IoT solutions today, but from a research point of view, it's also important that we think how flexible are our systems to deliver the IoT of tomorrow. So obviously, when an Horizon 2020 program is looking to IoT, yes, it looks to the 5G. And one of the perspectives that in Europe we want is to make 5G the engine for IoT. But it looks to cloud, private clouds, generic clouds, interoperability, catalog, how do I discover new objects, how can I configure objects? Yes. Or the data, what is the ability that I have to process big data, but also open data? Because sometimes we think about only big data, and the IoT domain we may need normal data in the size, but very relevant data, and above all, open data. So you see, a lot of things are combined, let alone the technology that will help us to develop new cyber-physical systems that will be consuming less energy, that can be cheap, that can be, spread like powder in the air in a catastrophe region to collect information, or that can be put in a lamp or can be designed to help this or that. But this holistic perspective, this perspective that brings us from one side, from the manufacturing side, up to the societal change, was missing in our perspective. And this is what we are trying to put in the work program for next year. We'll put more than 100 million in what we call large-scale pilots. Because also this corresponds to the notion that a number of technology developments have been taking place either in the research programs, in the industry, etc., and the technology is becoming mature in a number of these aspects. But we need to bring this into a kind of the whole value chain being integrated in these large-scale pilots. And this is an opportunity also to bring the research into the practice, to help business models to be tested, to help the integration of different business perspectives, to bring, people that is, working in one area confronted with working with the other area, bringing the interoperability aspects. We will do this in a lot of areas. Smart agriculture, smart cities, connected cars, wearables. But we will not do it alone. Again, when we look to the international perspective and we look to the calls that we are organizing with Brazil or with Japan or with Korea, we included aspects related to Internet of Things. Why? Because we believe that like with 5G or with cloud, we really need to have this global perspective. So here we are. We have the opportunity to support the European industry and European society to develop, demonstrations at scale of IoT integrated value-added chain, but we would like also to have these bridges to Brazil or Korea, Japan, where some of the calls are designed either to complement what we are doing. Say, for example, with Brazil, we test aspects of smart water management, things that we don't have explicit in the European large-scale pilots, or complementing perspectives. I'm just coming from Brazil, and being Portuguese, I speak the same language as all those guys on the other side, but they are very attached to precision agriculture. Actually, Brazil is one of the big exporters. So if we decide to do, in a collaboration with Brazil, some work on agriculture, that will be also on the benefit of our own industry in Europe. So we are looking to these synergies. The amount of money that we are putting is significant, and we don't want to have just another small project. We are putting roughly in the order of 20 million per project. But very interesting for the ones that know a little bit the constituency, the Brussels ecosystem. What is particularly important is that we in DG Connect discuss, for example, with DG Agriculture, and both DGs use their own, sorry to abuse this terminology, budget, because we don't hold any budget. The budget is from the citizens. But the budget that is traditionally associated to a leadership on industrial, like we are running in the Connect, and one budget for agriculture in the sense of the DG Agriculture perspective, we brought these budgets together to support the large-scale pilot on agriculture. This means that, why I mentioned that, means that we will have a clear perspective, not, and I'm going to be a little bit nasty with the people that is here, not of the colleagues from the technology perspective that believe that understand agriculture, but really we'll have a perspective from the agriculture people that sometimes we believe that they don't understand IoT, but they do indeed, brought together. And this is particularly important for us. So I believe that there is a lot of opportunities that I would like you to exploit very much in the context of the large-scale pilots that we are going to launch in the year to come. But then you tell me, yeah, but how do we prepare the things in Europe to make sure that this cutting across perspective is implemented? Don't we run the risk of having just another set of experiments without any impact? That will depend very much on you. This means if whoever is going to apply will see the opportunity to get a subsidy, sorry to be so frank, of 10 or 15 million distributed by a number of partners, this is neither good for you and certainly not good for Europe. And we don't have time to lose. So, a personal plea, if you want to participate, please make sure that you only participate if those large-scale pilots are part of your market and business strategy. We don't have really time to lose. And any diversion from this particular focus will be a loss for everybody. So we looked back and said, but how can we ensure that this happens? And Thibaut, that is there on the back of the room, when he started discussing with me these things, said, we need to work more hand-in-hand with industry. But not the traditional industry that we know that is associated to cyber-physical systems, or 5G, or cloud, or vertical A, or vertical B. Because again, if we do this discussion in a kind of bilateral, we just reinforce the current business model. And look, I mean, who am I to say that the current business model will not fly for a number of years? But I think that is our obligation as a research program to open up our mind not just to new technologies, but to new business models, to new approaches, because the differentiating factor is what may be the difference between being leaders or followers. So when Thibaut came and discussed with me, we said, yeah, we are missing something. We are missing a clear industrial perspective on IoT. Yeah, the connected cars, people know them. very well. Volkswagen and Renault talk to each other. The energy, yes, they talk to each other. The agriculture, but where do we get this perspective that cuts across as well? And we are particularly surprised for two things. First, our new commissioner, and sorry to be so egoistic in this first, our new commissioner, that is a person that has a very policy-oriented mind, got fascinated and said, I want to be in the launching of any new initiative with industry on IoT. But more importantly, when we talked to the industry, they said, you are right, we need to work together from that cross-cutting perspective. And so in a record time, we launched, together with the industry, in March this year, the Alliance for IoT Innovation. You see, IoT is in the core, but there are two particularly important words: alliance and innovation. Today we have more than 300 industrial representatives working together on that one. Recently, and we talk about March to November, recently they published 12 important reports, each one coming from one working group, that go from the business perspective to the standards, to the technology, to the aspects of liability or trust and security. During the day you'll have opportunity to get familiar with those, but even after that, go and see first what you can extract from these reports. Second, if you are not part of this industrial alliance, it will be very, very important. So this convergence of willingness from industry and political support made us being able to announce this Alliance for IoT Innovation in March and get it full speed since then. And we believe that it will be core on this process of giving credibility to the large-scale pilots of the future. So work together, because there you don't find one sector, you find all the sectors together. It would not be surprising to you that you find working groups working more in the topics that I just said, but also bring in the dimension of agriculture, the dimension of wearables or health or education, or you name it. So here is a plea: join efforts with us, join efforts with industry. First, to create a significantly strong alliance. Second, to make this alliance influence, the experiments at scale that I believe that we need to do in Europe. We will not get the leadership in IoT because of our large-scale pilots. This is a small amount of money, but they are catalyzing a perspective. And so you can use it. You can bring your own initiatives into this perspective. You can confront yourselves with other technology or business or service providers that you are not confronted with normally, to see how far technology or business-wise or from the service perspective you can work together. So this is a very important dimension that I believe that could be useful for all of you. But again, George mentioned the other perspective of the digital single market. In fact, for IoT, having a single market is absolutely fundamental. Think about logistics. Okay, we don't have the roaming in the future, but numbering. What about numbering? If I have a parcel or a car that moves throughout Europe, how do I get the numbering schemes in such a way that we facilitate, we enable Internet of Things to flourish and not to make it another barrier to that one? And obviously, we will have always a lot of concerns about, I would say, the negative parts of IoT, but I really prefer to put first the positive things about IoT. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that is much more knowledgeable on the possibilities that IoT offer to create difficulties to our own understanding of society and life. But obviously, you cannot ignore the aspects of trust and security, because they become fundamentally different from what we are used to do. Objects will take decisions on the basis of policies. We expect that their decisions will be conforming with the policies that we authorize them to take, but this may not be the case. So there is here very big challenges to our own understanding of aspects of trust and security. And if we citizens do not trust the IoT, it will not flourish then. Aspects of liability, very important. We could give the simple examples of who will be responsible when something acts on our behalf. But I believe that if we go into the more academic domain, the challenge for us is to understand the whole context of liability in a fully connected, an object-active society. We don't know. So we have here a big challenge for us, not because we may take the wrong decisions, simply because we don't know how to address yet completely the problem, let alone our digital single market from a perspective of legislation, for example, may or may not act. Free flow of data, obviously, is fundamental for an IoT. First in Europe, but in the world. Data has to fly, has to move to allow us to remotely control something or to be able to get the benefits when we travel around Europe, for example. So free flow of data is very fundamental. Again, free flow of data is very fundamental for cloud. But there is an added perspective because, we generate data and sensors or information that, or any other generating data objects, may be put in one particular place just to serve society, to give an open information. Does it give the right information? How do I decide if the information that I got is right or not? And if it is not right, how do we see who is liable for that situation? So here is much more complex, and we are all looking to you and your reflections to get inspiration to what we need to do. We believe that the way to tackle aspects of free flow of data, liability, data ownership, or as we sometimes when we discuss internally, we say data non-ownership. This means the data that we believe that is ours, but as an interest for society, because it may help society to organize itself in a different way. How do we tackle all of that? Again, in the context of next year, towards, say, in 1 year from now, we believe that we need to put a reflection on all these aspects at the political level. So we expect to be able to launch a communication that is, for the ones more familiar with our terminology, it's a kind of a piece of paper with a reflection that will have some concrete proposals that will, for example, not allow member states to de facto or de jure to limit the free flow of data in Europe, but at the same time that will make a reflection on the aspects of data ownership, data liability, security, trust, etc. So again, join us in this reflection. There are consultations in the context of the digital single market that you may be interested to look. Some of them tackle directly this aspect. Some of them are specific questions on IoT, on open platforms, and your views are particularly important for us. So that was what I wanted to share with you. We are facing a big challenge. We are facing a big opportunity. We are trying to tackle it from a different perspective in an Horizon 2020 program that believes that we have certain maturity in some of the key technologies, and side by side with developing data, cloud, 5G, security, is trying to put a perspective of bringing the value chain in experimentations at scale and looking to the digital single market to see how decisions at this level will enable Europe to be a leader on the IoT of the future. And we count on you to support us on this strategy. Thank you very much.